Hello. I spent a bit longer on this update just so I could get a break from making the actual devlogs for a while, but I'm done and now I'm back. Since the last devlog was focused on overworld improvements, I wanted to focus this devlog on improving the battles, but in the end I worked a little on the overworld as well. If this is your first time on the channel, Ponpai is a tactical strategy game where you befriend monsters. If you want to know more about the game, the introductory video will be linked in the description. First of all, since I added a background to the overworld last time, I wanted to add one to the battles as well. This proved a lot trickier than the overworld did, since the battle system is somewhat abstract. I would need a background that represents the place the fight is in, clearly communicates where the Ponpai are allowed to step, and of course, looks good. I ended up with this background for the street fights, and personally I'm really happy with how they turned out. My initial problem was that, at first, it wasn't clear where the gap between the two fields was, at least when looking at just the sprite itself. So I added a line of wet pavement to represent that. But then when I actually added it to the game, the sprites to indicate which Ponpai is going next were hard to read. So I added a background sprite for them, and while I was at it, I added an indicator to show which team that Ponpai is on. But then, when there's 4 of them, they all bunch together, and it doesn't look nearly as nice as the pre-background ones. So I removed 3 of them, and kept the one indicating who's going directly next. But then, that's just less information. Some people might want to know who's coming 2 turns later, right? So I added a toggle for this in the pause menu, letting you choose how many turns later you can see. And finally, I think the background works. I want to figure out something with the classes later, but they're fine enough as is. Speaking of the pause menu though, I also added an inventory. Now you can look at all of your items even outside of battle. Of course, there were only ever 3 items before, so I added a few more to make it look more filled out. And some of those aren't even food. Now we have held items that will affect a Ponpai's stats. I want to divide them into different screens later on, but for now they're all lumped into a single box. But I did make it so the held items won't appear in battle, so there's that. You can add or remove items through the team builder using this new info box. You can give them food as well, but it won't do anything in battle. Oh yeah, I changed up the info boxes. The old ones were very small and cramped, so I wanted something bigger and flashier. Of course, something like this would cover up half of the Ponpai, so I added 2 boxes, and depending on the cursor position, it'll select the one on either side. I could have just taken the cursor's global position and figured out if it was above or below the halfway point of the screen, but that doesn't quite work here. See, in the team builder, the 2 halves aren't divided evenly, so if I did that, then all the Ponpai around here would trigger the box on the left. So instead of that, I added a position on the team builder that's slightly off-center, and I just measure whether the cursor is on the left or right side of that. I also added this to the battles, since the camera there doesn't actually start at 0, 0. I had a bit of a problem with the mouse hovering over the Ponpai in the team builder, since there was a little space between them, which leads to this obnoxious flickering effect. So to prevent this, to access the info box in the team builder, you have to click on the Ponpai and drop them in the same spot. Exclusive to the team builder, the info box also has options on the bottom. One of them is to give this Ponpai an item, we've already talked about that, and one is to rename them. Back when I first created the renaming function, I put it in a circle that you had to drag the Ponpai into to activate. But that was always just a placeholder until I could do something like this. Finally, the new info boxes can let you unfriend Ponpai, permanently removing them from the game. Speaking of Ponpai, I've added 3 new species to the game, each one bringing something unique. The first is Ringaround, this centipede-looking thing. I added them so I could try out a new form of movement in the overworld, where the Ponpai will head towards the player but curve away from them. I wasn't able to make this work, so for now they just move normally. At the very least, their ability was new. Unpredictable gives each tile of their attack a 5% chance to appear next to where they're supposed to be. This can be a benefit or a curse depending on your luck. Next up is Caviterror, the ghost of a rotten tooth. On top of a new hazard, the acid puddle, one of Caviterror's attacks induces crying. This is another status effect I'm very proud of. If a Ponpai is crying, they'll receive chip damage anytime a teammate is hurt. This can be great for clearing out multiple Ponpai at once, but the crying will go away on its own. Finally, I added Chefire, a candle with a passion for cooking. I added them so I could implement their ability, culinary skills, which gives them a 10% chance of picking up a random food item between battles. It'll select one from your inventory to duplicate, so in theory I can keep adding as many items as I want, and the Chefire will adapt to it. One of Chefire's attacks is Perfectionism, meaning I had to introduce a second status effect, Pressure. If a Ponpai is pressured, any attack that they miss will be disabled for the rest of the fight, even if they have the pressure taken off of them. Of course, this might lead to a situation where all of their attacks are disabled. So to counter that, I've added a pass button, letting you skip your attack at any point. And that's everything I've done for this update. If you want to try out the prototype for yourself, the link will be in the description. Otherwise, look forward to the next devlog, where I'll be working on a side quest. Thanks for watching.